Hegemons sit at the very top of the title hierarchy in CK3. But what actually makes them worth chasing? For starters, you can have emperors as your vassals. That means fewer people to manage overall, but each one of them is far more powerful and dangerous if they decide to rebel. Alongside that, you gain a boost to your number of knights, regiments, alkalides, and domain limit. Schemes against you are less effective, and your vassal limit is significantly higher. Of course, it's not all upsides. Forming some of the hegemons can be extremely difficult depending on the requirements, and there is a hefty 80% increase to mercenary costs. One of the most unique perks is the tribute system. Neighboring realms may voluntarily show up at your court offering gifts, gold, herd, if you're nomadic, artifacts, concubines, or eunuchs, assuming they actually have those to give. As a player, you can also provide tributes yourself. Say you're neighboring one of these hegemons, you will then be able to transport to their capital. In return, you might receive a artifact, unlock a new innovation, gain a temporary modifier that boosts taxes and development in your capital, or leave it up to the gods and see what the hegemon decides. Afterwards, they may ask you to become their tribute, which you can accept or refuse with minimal consequences. For the hegemon, you can demand tribute directly from nearby rulers, though they won't always agree. The best way to ensure success is to have 100 opinion with them. Once they accept, you'll get several options, giving them an artifact costing you 60 gold, gain free tech progress, establish a trade post in their capital for 60 gold, boost their legitimacy, or simply take the reward and move on. So now you know why becoming a hegemon is so powerful in CK3. Now let's break down all the hegemons currently in the game so you can decide whether my list holds up. I feel like whenever I talk about CK3, I always end up circling back to Rome. And honestly, it makes sense. It's one of those achievements almost everyone has attempted at least once. What makes the Roman Empire, now hegemon, so interesting is that only 3 empires can form it: the Holy Roman Empire, the Byzantine Empire, and a unified Italy. So what exactly is unified Italy? First, you need to access the Italia Empire. Then you must control all the lands in the Italian region, plus Illyria, the northern Balkans area. Beyond being a stepping stone to Rome, this decision is interesting because it unlocks several powerful cultural traditions for the Latin culture group, including guilds, men-at-arms, and pike columns. Now back to Rome. All 3 paths to form Rome share the same core requirements, but the outcomes are very different. You'll need to be a legendary figure and hold the 15 duchies scattered across the Mediterranean. Once you meet these requirements, you can restore Rome. If you do it as the HRE or Unified Italy, you absorb the de jure lands of all your held empires, gain the Augustus title, and unlock your powerful casus belli to reclaim the Roman territories. But if you do Rome as Byzantium, especially with the Roads to Power DLC, you get 3 options. The first mirrors HRE in Italy path. The second lets you revive Hellenism as a Roman faith and unlocks the unique household gods tenet. The third, and most interesting, combines both of these benefits and adds the Pax Romana CAB, which lets you invade entire empires in one go. Of course, that power comes at a cost. It accelerates the Mongol invasion, increases the likelihood of wars for other kingdom tier rulers, and makes every peasant faction in your realm target you. In other words, constant chaos. Another really cool aspect of forming the Roman hegemon is the automatically adds your current controlled lands into the de jure structure. So the bigger your empire, when you press the button, the bigger Rome becomes. Once the hegemon is created, you can split it in 2, giving rise to the Western and Eastern Roman empires, who are considered hegemons. The only hegemon that can create more hegemons. All the other ones just get destroyed. Ranking Rome. Easy A tier. Turning the entire map into your de jure territory is incredibly strong, and once you're done, you can hand off half, preferably the west, to a family member, and effectively doubling your renown gain. To be honest, the requirements of India haven't really changed much since it became a hegemon, because even before that, it wasn't exactly one of the strongest empires. It's fun to form for sure, but needs a little bit more going on. The requirements themselves are pretty straightforward. You need to follow one of the major Indian religions, Buddhism, Hinduism, or Jainism, reach the highest level of devotion, aka religious icon, at least for non-mandalic governments, and fully control the 3 empires that make up the subcontinent: Deccan, Rajasthan, and Bengal. On top of that, you'll need to meet the usual scaling piety and gold requirements based on your character and nation. So, what do you actually get for all this work? First, you get a Heroic's Legendary Seed, a solid boost to your level of fame, aka 2 levels. You also unlock a unique trait called Chakravarti, which honestly would be way cooler if it were inherited. Probably the most useful bonus is the rightful ruler of the world modifier, which gives you cheaper holy wars by 50%. Even better, the modifier can carry over if you decide to create a new faith later on. As for ranking India, I'd put it at a C tier. Not much really changed with the upgrade to Hegemon, and the decision itself kind of reflects that. It literally still states that the Empire of India becomes your primary title. It also suffers from not letting you fold in additional controlled empires like Rome or Dar al-Islam can, which makes it feel a lot more limited. If Chakravarti were inheritable, that alone would be a big improvement, and adding some unique bonuses for mandala style government when taking the decision would go a long way towards making it feel more rewarding. China is the only hegemon on this list that actually exists at the start of all 3 start dates. It also comes with a complete unique system. The main focus of All Under Heaven, besides the map expansion, is the dynastic cycle. Similar to the Iberian struggle, the dynastic cycle applies different modifiers depending on the current phase, making it easier for the hegemon to expand, develop, or even explode. On top of that, China has political movements that further shape how the realm functions during each phase. Pro-dynasty supports the Son of Heaven and strengthens the central authority. Advancement focuses on development while reducing military emphasis. Expansion pushes for larger borders and stronger armies. Conservative, empowering influential families within the court. And unaligned, neutral faction waiting to be swayed into one of the others. So how do you actually form China? It all comes down to claiming the mandate of heaven. If China already exists, you'll just have to take it the traditional way. Get a claim and go to war. Easier said than done, since the Son of Heaven typically commands anywhere between 11 to 30,000 troops, depending on how far you are into the game. However, if China already is collapsed, reforming it is much easier. Reclaiming the mandate of heaven, you only need to control 51% of the de jure territory while the dynastic cycle is in division phase, which usually will be happening if China has already fallen. The game even helps you out, granting a special CB that lets you rapidly conquer neighbors until you hit the 51% threshold. Once you do, you can take the decision to restore China. This grants to you the Son of Heaven modifier, boosting renown, influence, vassal opinion. Your dynasty also gains 2,500 renown, and you automatically vassalize rulers who share your culture heritage or use a celestial government type, as long as they are part of the dynastic system. As for ranking China, the combination of the dynastic cycle and political movement makes it one of the more dynamic and engaging hegemon experiences. And the fact that they're relatively easy to restore after a collapse only adds to its appeal. This lands China comfortably in an S tier. While you can form it with most government types, the celestial government is clearly the intended and strongest way to play it, thanks to all the extra bonuses. Next on our hegemon ranking list is easily the toughest challenge, the Mongol hegemon or the Great Khaganate. What makes it so brutal? You only get 75 years to pull it off, no matter your start date. On top of that, you need to take the Khan of Khans decision, which is anything but easy. If you're not familiar, that means becoming a nomad with absolute dominance and winning a massive war against basically everyone who opposes you, often hundreds of thousands of soldiers attacking from multiple directions. If you somehow survive that, you're not done. You have to rapidly expand either 1,500 or 2,000 realm size tributes included, all while staying within that 75-year window. And even after that, you'll still need to pay 7,500 gold, 5,000 prestige, and hit max fame and legitimacy. That's an insane checklist to complete in what is essentially a single generation. So what do you get for all that effort? First, you upgrade from an empire to a full hegemon. You'll also get a bump up to a 5-star education trait automatically, unless you are already there. After that, you'll be given several unique government decisions. The simplest option is to stay nomadic and gain 1,000 renown for your house. The next set of options lets you transition into clan, feudal, or meritocracy government, converting your nomadic assets like your herd and domicile into gold and special troops, a powerful mix of cavalry, levies, and siege units. Then the most extreme option, remaining nomadic and burning all your vassals' lands outside the steppe. This can net you anywhere from a few thousand to hundreds of thousands of gold, while also forcing many of your vassals into a nomadic lifestyle. No matter what you choose, the de jure territory of the Khaganate will only convert the entire Great Steppe. As for ranking the Great Khaganate, I'm gonna say it is a B. The flexibility at the end of choosing your government type and automatically having a 5-star education are both incredible fun rewards, but the cost of doing it is just too high. Becoming Khan of Khans, hitting the massive realm size within 75 years is a huge hurdle for what you get in return. Dar al-Islam is the only head of faith title on the Hegemon ranking list, and alone makes it incredibly stable, especially in the hands of the AI. Why is it so reliable? Because as the head of faith title, there are no claimants. It passes cleanly from one generation to the next with the same family, unless something extreme happens, like an entire dynasty getting wiped out. That built-in stability already puts it above some of the other titles on this list. So, how do you form Dar al-Islam in CK3? Requirements are a bit stricter than Rome or India, but way easier than Khaganate. First, you need to be Muslim and a head of your faith just to unlock the decision. With around 20 Islamic faiths plus customization, you get a lot of flexibility to tailor something that fits your playstyle. Once the decision becomes available, here's what you'll need. Be an exalted among men and religious icon. Fully control the regions of Arabia, Syria, Persia, and North Africa, which is a lot more of Africa than you think. Control 70% of all Muslim counties. That last requirement can vary a lot depending on your start date, 867 to 10 counties. In 1066, it jumps up to about 340, and in the later start can go as high as 383. Of course, those numbers can shift depending on how the world evolves after you unpause. Now for the rewards. First, you get a Hegemon title itself, along with 500 prestige and piety, but the real strength comes from the bonuses. Vassals cannot create or join dissolution factions against you, making your realm incredibly stable. The head of your house, which should be you, gains a permanent subjugation CB against all other Muslim branches, Sunni, Shia, and others. The CB alone makes the expansion across the map much easier, letting you snowball hard if you want to. So where does Dar al-Islam fall on this ranking list? Honestly, it's an S tier. It's relatively easy to form, gives powerful and practical bonuses, and offers a ton of flexibility. You can use it to conquer the world or just hand it off to a cadet branch while you go do something else. 10 out of 10, no notes. Before we wrap up, let's talk about a few regions and titles that really should be elevated to Hegemon status. The two that come up the most, especially in my comment section, and make the most sense are Slavia and a United Africa. For those who don't know, Slavia is a formidable title for the rulers of Slavic heritage. To create it, you need to control all the Slavic lands, around 298 counties, which rewards you with an empire tier title. As for Africa, you'll need to control all 454 counties on the continent, and yes, that includes the Canary Islands. What do you get for this massive effort? Basically a firm handshake and a pat on the back. Just a heroic legendary seat on 750 prestige. Pretty underwhelming. Both of these feel like perfect candidates for Hegemon status, since they represent either a massive culture group or clearly a defined region. That idea opens up the door to something bigger. There really should be multiple paths to form a Hegemon, as long as you meet certain requirements. Take something like Dar al-Islam. Why not expand that concept? Major faith groups like Christianity, Buddhism, or even some of the pagan religions could have their own Hegemon-style titles. That requirements could control a large portion of the religious counties, along with key historical regions tied to that faith. It wouldn't work for every religion, but for the few that it does, it would definitely fit the bill. Same goes for the culture groups. Some are tiny like Magyar or Syriac, but others like Turkic or Mongolic are massive, and Mongolic already has the Khaganate as a kind of equivalent. A system where controlling all the counties tied to your culture group, plus additional large territory requirement, could allow for culture hegemonies to form. Adding a system like that would clean up a lot of the "why isn't this region included" complaints and giving players multiple paths to reaching the top tier title. Realistically though, we'll probably just get a create custom Hegemon decision at some point, and maybe even with the option to pick the government type if we're lucky. That's all for today. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, you know what to do. Tell a friend. No friends? Tell your parents. No parents? Tell your boss. Unemployed? Tell a stranger. And if you never leave the house, go tell people you're arguing with on some subreddit about what we're cooking up on this channel. All right, thanks for watching. See you next time.